There was a small village called Umeus. It was a peaceful and prosperous community, surrounded by lush green forests and fertile farmland. The villagers lived in harmony with one another, and their lives were governed by a strong sense of tradition and culture. However, amidst this peaceful setting, there lived a man named Chief Okoro, who was notorious for his wickedness and cruelty. He was a wealthy landlord, who owned a vast portion of the land in Umeus. Chief Okoro was a tall, dark-skinned man in his late 50s, with a stern face and a cold, calculating gaze. He was feared by all, and his very presence sent shivers down the spines of the villagers. Chief Okoro's wickedness knew no bounds. He would often increase the rent on his properties, without warning, leaving many of the villagers struggling to make ends meet. He would also seize the properties of those who were unable to pay their rent, leaving them homeless and destitute. Despite his wealth and power, Chief Okoro was a lonely and miserable man. He had no family, and his only companions were his wealth and his cruel deeds. He lived in a large, ornate mansion, surrounded by high walls and guarded by fierce dogs. One day, a young man named Ikenna moved to Umeus, in search of a better life. He was a hard-working and ambitious young man, who was determined to make a name for himself in the village. Ikenna rented a small room in one of Chief Okoro's properties, and he quickly settled into his new life. However, Ikenna soon discovered that Chief Okoro was not a kind and benevolent landlord. He was a cruel and heartless man, who cared little for the welfare of his tenants. Ikenna tried to avoid Chief Okoro as much as possible, but it was impossible to do so. The chief would often visit his properties, collecting rent and intimidating his tenants. As time passed, Ikenna became increasingly frustrated with Chief Okoro's wicked ways. He began to organize the other tenants, encouraging them to stand up against the chief's cruelty. However, Chief Okoro was a powerful and ruthless man, and he would stop at nothing to maintain his control over the village. One day, Chief Okoro announced that he would be increasing the rent on all of his properties. The tenants were outraged, and they refused to pay the new rent. Chief Okoro was furious, and he threatened to evict anyone who did not comply with his demands. Ikenna and the other tenants stood firm, refusing to back down. They argued that the rent increase was unfair, and that Chief Okoro was taking advantage of his power and wealth. The chief was unmoved, and he vowed to teach the tenants a lesson. The standoff between Chief Okoro and the tenants continued for several days. The villagers were divided, with some supporting the chief and others supporting the tenants. The situation was tense, and it seemed as though it could escalate into violence at any moment. As the standoff continued, Ikenna began to notice strange occurrences around the village. Tools would go missing, and food would disappear from the market. It seemed as though someone was trying to destabilize the village, and Ikenna suspected that Chief Okoro was behind it. One night, Ikenna decided to investigate the strange occurrences. He snuck out of his room, and he began to search the village for clues. As he walked through the dark and deserted streets, he stumbled upon a group of men who were gathered around a fire. They were speaking in hushed tones, and they seemed to be planning something. Ikenna crept closer, trying not to be seen. As he listened to their conversation, he realized that they were Chief Okoro's men. They were planning to attack the tenants, to teach them a lesson for defying the chief. Ikenna knew that he had to act quickly. He snuck back to his room, and he began to spread the word to the other tenants. They quickly organized themselves, preparing to defend their homes against Chief Okoro's men. The night was tense, with both sides waiting for the other to make a move. However, as the hours passed, it became clear that Chief Okoro's men were not going to attack. They had been deterred by the tenants' bravery and determination. The next morning, Chief Okoro appeared in the village, his face twisted with rage. He threatened to evict the tenants, to destroy their homes and their livelihoods. However, the tenants stood firm, refusing to back down. However, as the days passed, It became clear that Chief Okoro's power and influence were waning.